If you're unfamiliar with Wedding TikTok, then prepare yourself. I've mentioned my wedding in passing here on YouTube, but if you don't follow me on Instagram, you might not have seen much about it. So I thought it could be fun to do a video about wedding trends going on social media right now and talk about my wedding at the same time. Because let me tell you, planning a wedding whilst being online as much as I am for my job is just opening yourself up to massive amounts of overconsumptive pressure. And we're gonna be getting into that in this video and sorting Wedding TikTok into things I think you really don't need to do and are just a waste of money or just pretty chronically online versus things that I think are fun and meaningful and could be good for you to do. And then we're going to talk about what we actually ended up doing and what I think worked really well for our wedding and how I managed to sort out what was important to me versus what I was being told to do online. Just a PSA before we start. This is obviously an opinion video. Everything I'm saying is my opinion based on my personality and what me and my husband wanted for our wedding. So you might not agree with all of these takes, and that's okay. It's your wedding. You should do what you want for your wedding. Even if you're not planning a wedding in the future, even if you don't think you're going to get married at all, I think this is kind of fun to see what Wedding TikTok is like. Hence why I wanted to do this video in the first place. As always, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and you come say hi on other social media. And with that, let's get into it. So part one is wedding TikTok trends I've seen either happening already this year with 2026 brides or predictions for the next couple of years. The first, to no one's surprise, is going immediately in my dislike column, and that's the cigarette trend. Now, this is not just like a guest having a cigarette and that being in some of the photos. No, this is like people putting out cigarette trays or having a cigarette bar as decoration, as like recreational activities for their guests during the reception, the after party, whatever. Very romanticized, very highly styled in like silver burnished trays with maybe like a personalized matchbook next to it, which is also a wedding favor. And I think this has become a big trend in part because Charlie XCX did it at her wedding and people saw that and thought, oh, okay, this is cool. But for obvious health, social reasons, I don't like this trend at all. I think it's very much part of like the anti-bride, cool bride trend that's kind of creeping in right now. People trying to be alternative, people trying to get away from like the traditional millennial wedding decor. And to me, this just doesn't make sense for a lot of people. Maybe if your social group is already heavy smokers, then yes, okay, this could be for you. But the idea of this being a popular wedding trend across social media makes me feel weird. And I mean, for one thing, if your social group is already smokers, they're gonna bring their cigarettes to the wedding anyway. So making it part of the decor, it just doesn't make sense. I could go on about this, so I'm gonna cut myself off. Okay, in the opposite column, the like column, I've got lace and embroidery. I've seen a lot of inspo of people really heavily incorporating lace, especially into their decor. And I'm not actually a fan of going overboard on this. I think it can start to look a little bit too much if you have like your menus and your place cards and your invites and like a lace background all together. I think it's too much. But little details of lace, I think are so cute, very romantic, very timeless. And I think just having like one little lace thing could be really pretty, especially since it can get pretty expensive if you want to have it everywhere. Lace is an expensive fabric. Same with embroidered details. I think these can be really sweet, but either very time consuming if you're doing it yourself or expensive if you're getting someone to do it for you. So I think, again, little touches of this is really cute. Maybe like getting something embroidered on your wedding outfit, the groom's shirt having like your initials on it, or maybe like a pocket square having embroidery. That can be quite cute, but again, I think less is more here. One trend I saw before I'd even started like thinking about the color scheme for my wedding was the chartreuse color scheme that everyone seemed to be having. And immediately I was just kind of put off by the fact that it was everywhere and people were calling it like the 2026 color scheme. I don't really buy into like having the same color scheme as everyone else. I think it will immediately make your wedding feel dated in a year or two. And I also don't like the idea of doing it just because that's what everyone's doing. I do think this color combo is really pretty. But for me personally, the idea of getting your color scheme off a TikTok just doesn't feel personal enough. I think trying to find color schemes that naturally come in your everyday life is so much better. Finding the colors you gravitate towards is so much better. And it will mean that when you look back, it's personal, it's not dated. The colors make sense to you because probably you're going to keep having them in your life. Okay, in the same column and very related is the wedding dress style that has become a big trend, and everyone having similar dress styles every year. This might be controversial because I know wedding fashion follows the same kind of cyclical cycle as the rest of the fashion industry, and you're always going to have trends that come up. But the drop waist being very, very in style for now is just gonna become really dated again, in my opinion. It's not my favorite kind of silhouette anyway, but I really try to avoid going to wedding dress shops that I knew were trend led. I wanted to find something very classic, something that felt very me, and that's why I really wasn't consuming a lot of wedding dress content. I was following the brand that I bought my main wedding dress from for about 3 years before we did the wedding, and so I already knew what I wanted. But even if you don't know at all what you want, I think looking at references from like films and TV, fashion magazines, old family photos would be a better inspiration to start with than going on TikTok and seeing what everyone else is wearing. Again, maybe that's not for everyone, but that was quite important to me to make sure that my dress felt like the one for me and I wasn't listening to outside influence. My next one is kind of straddling the line between dislike and like. The projection trend that's going on. People are getting backdrops for their wedding dinner or something and projecting old home movies on there, maybe like the wedding couple as kids, family memories and stuff, doing it in black and white. I think it looks so cute and it can be a really, really personal touch. However, something about it feels more like a brand event to me than a wedding. It just feels a bit too stylized, a bit too editorial. And it being editorial is not necessarily a bad thing to me, but this feels a bit too much. Maybe just because of the type of wedding I had, very small, very intimate. This doesn't feel like it fits into that vibe. However, maybe if you're having like a society wedding or you've got hundreds of people, this could be cute. I don't know. I just also feel like it's a little bit distracting from letting people talk and connect. Again, maybe if you have people there that don't know each other that well, this could be a good icebreaker. I don't know. I'm very, very on the fence about it. Same also with the linen backdrop trend that seems to be going on. People standing in front of linen drapery when they get married or having their wedding portrait with a linen background. Again, I think it's very editorial. I'm sure the photos will be absolutely stunning. But again, it feels like a lot. It feels like something you do at a brand event because it's very much about how it will look. And not to mention, if you're buying this fabric to set this up, then what are you going to do with it after? That's a lot of fabric for you to then have to repurpose instead of hopefully not throwing away. You could rent it, but I think it would be a very expensive rental. And I'm just not sure it's worth it for the price. If you've got an unlimited budget, if you really like editorial content in your wedding, then maybe this one's for you. I do think it looks really, really pretty. And there was a moment where I was considering it, but thankfully the place we had our wedding at had so many gorgeous backdrops already that I didn't think it was necessary. And I'm glad I didn't do it. Something that is definitely not worth the money, in my opinion, is wedding merch. I don't know how much you guys know about WEDDINGTOK, but it seems like everyone is trying to outdo everyone else. And every single wedding has more and more things that people have thought up that they need to have for their wedding that makes their wedding even more unique. And wedding merch has become an almost expected part of the wedding itself, the bachelorette or the stag do. And it's just getting a bit insane to me. Like buying your bridesmaids custom pajamas for the night before, making hats or t-shirts or whatever. I just think, when are people gonna wear these again? Especially if the like custom part of it is your wedding day or you and your partner's names rather than personalized to the person who you're gifting it to. Like, when are they gonna wear a t-shirt that says Matt and Katie's wedding. Again, I just don't think the overconsumption is justified here. And this is kind of a broader point about how people have turned weddings into overconsumption. It's this idea of like, the more we spend, the more we buy to show our thoughtfulness, to show our love for the people coming, the less it becomes about the event and what's happening between two people, in my opinion, and it just turns again into like a brand event, into something you have to have a memento for to remember, as though the memories aren't enough. And I'm not to say that like wedding favors is not really, really cute, and I do think you can do this in meaningful ways, but a piece of clothing that you're not gonna wear again just feels wasteful. I'll try to finish the rest of these quickly because I do want to talk about the wedding. So another one in the light column is flats over heels. Personal again, but I'm not a heels person, I'm a flats person, and I absolutely loved being able to get some really cute baby blue suede ballet flats, which I know I'm going to be able to wear again and again. I've already worn them a couple of times after the wedding, and it meant that I was so comfortable on the day. Not to mention the fact that these were my something blues, I think was just really fun. When I told my mum about this, she was not on board, but when she saw them, she absolutely loved them. So I count that as a win. Okay, dislike column, food as decor. Surely this is a bit on the nose given everything that's happening economically right now. The idea that you have mountains of grapes, mountains of fresh fruit as table decor and it might not be eaten really doesn't appeal to me. Obviously, if you make the food you're definitely going to eat look really pretty on the table, I think that's a bit different. But putting food out you don't think is going to get eaten just so the table looks prettier, it's a no from me. And I'll link it back to the food and fashion video because I do think this trend has been born out of the fashion food trend. Okay, and last thing on the like column, disposable cameras. And this might be a little bit controversial given everything I've said about keeping things as long as possible, but I do think there's something in having disposable cameras for your guests, and I'll go into that when I talk about the photography we did in the part 2. Okay, so part 2 of the video, bearing in mind everything I just said about what TikTok is telling you need to have, about what other people have been doing, this is what we ended up doing that I think worked, and all the ways we tried to keep things meaningful, tried to make mindful consumptive choices about a day that is really only just one day of your life. For us, it was a weekend actually. But, you know, throughout this entire thing, we were really trying to keep in mind that this didn't have to be a big consumptive event. This is really just about love and coming together with our family. And that influenced a lot of our decisions. So I'll go through them. So for one thing, the overconsumptive message around wedding outfits and how much you have to buy to look like a bride really wound me up, and I had to sort of find ways around this because I did want to feel like a bride at certain moments. I wanted to do my bridal brunch in something that I would consider bridal. I wanted to obviously buy a wedding dress. I had to find a way to reconcile my urge for sustainability with this part of my life, and that meant that I rented a lot of my wardrobe. So for my hen do, my wedding brunch, the night before the wedding, I rented the outfits, and that meant that I could wear something different to all of them and match the vibe of whatever I was doing, but without the guilt of consumerism because they could go back to their owners afterwards. And I highly, highly recommend doing that. I'm a big renter anyway, but my wedding was definitely the thing I've rented the most for, and I found it really, really fun. I also encouraged our guests to rent their outfits for the wedding. I didn't ask if anyone did, I kind of just left it up to them, but on our wedding website, we left some suggestions of places you can rent from really easily and just kind of left it at that. For my wedding dresses, of which there were 2, I did first and foremost consider renting them. I decided against it. I did go to try on some rental dresses from somewhere here in London, and I just couldn't find the outfit that I wanted. So instead, I decided to shop from independent, smaller brands, and I'm really happy with both dresses that I found. My main dress was from the Own Studio. I've been following that brand for 3 or 4 years on my Instagram, so as soon as my husband proposed to me, I booked an appointment with them to go see their wedding dresses, and I did have that moment where I tried on the dress and knew it was the one, which was really, really lovely. My second dress was from an online store that I'd also been following for a couple of years, seen a couple of people wearing them, knew that I really liked the style. And I ended up wearing that to our smaller London ceremony and also the night of our wedding. So I had like an outfit change on the day. And I'm very happy I went to small brands. My main wedding dress, they were sensational with tailoring it to me with the whole service. Could not recommend them more. And both were actually quite helpful when I was asking them about the option to dye the fabric after the wedding, because that was something I was quite proactive about, thinking what I was going to do with them afterwards. I haven't actually decided for my main dress yet, and I need suggestions about what to do with it, because part of me does want to preserve it because it's so perfect, but the other part of me doesn't like the idea of it sitting in a wardrobe for a while and it feels wasteful. So I know that I could probably get it redesigned into something. I'm not too excited about the idea of a top and a skirt because I don't think I'd wear them as much. I've toyed with the idea of getting like a jacket done because the fabric is quite heavy embroidery and I feel like that would be really, really pretty. But I want to know if you guys have any thoughts too, and I'm going to consider them. And maybe I'll go to Loom and talk to them about getting something designed and we'll make that a whole video. I don't know. My second dress, the smaller one, I think I'm going to get dyed into another color and just wear that as a normal dress. I also got a veil from the Own Studio, and oh my god, the veil was potentially my favorite part of the outfit. That I'm going to keep as a keepsake and maybe pass that down onto future children, future grandchildren, maybe my sister if she wants to borrow it. Like, that is going to be a family heirloom. So I'm pretty happy with keeping that as it is. I've mentioned that a big part of our wedding planning was keeping in mind that we didn't want something really over the top. We had a really, really intimate weekend with only our closest friends and family, and every decision we made, we kept in mind how we wanted it to feel on the weekend. For our wedding, we had the ceremony in the morning, we had a pool party and pizza party for the afternoon. We played some tennis on the tennis courts. Everyone was chilling in the pool. And then we all came back together for like a candlelit dinner in the evening and danced into the morning. It was just such a perfect day for us. It's exactly what we wanted to do. And even though we had to convince the venue and our wedding planner that this is what we wanted to do, I wouldn't have changed it for the world because it was just so fun. And our friends and family had so much fun, I think. And anyway, that's what I mean about keeping things personal. In order to do that, I made certain decisions about the wedding that I'm going to go over that I think made all the difference. Again, this is just what I did for our wedding. But for one thing, I curated the hell out of all of our playlists. After finding our wedding venue, this was the second task I did, even before finding my wedding dress, was make like 6 or 7 playlists for every moment of the day. I think because I spent so much time on it, I made sure the vibe was right for every moment. This was the thing I got the most compliments about from our guests and also from the staff at the venue, which was the best compliment I got all weekend. I've put some of those playlists on Spotify. Feel free to go check them out, use them for your wedding, whatever. But yeah, having music that was tailored to us as a couple, our guests, meant that it was just a good vibe all round. There was constantly music playing and constantly good music playing. Another decision we made was to handwrite the stationery as much as possible. And if you're able to do this, I highly recommend doing it because not only is it massively cost saving, but it's really personal and cute and keepsakey. For our wedding invites, we made a little postcard of the venue, and in the same envelope we did a little letter just inviting people to come and celebrate, with a little link to the wedding website at the bottom, which had way more details and things people needed to know. And yeah, I thought that was a really cute little thing to keep. This is sweet for the fridge, maybe. Same with our wedding vows. I made my husband write his on a piece of paper because I'm personally not a fan of people reading them out on their phones. And that means that I have the paper that I can keep in a wedding box as well, which I think is really cute, with like scribbles and additions written out. Just that to me was really personal. Again, maybe not for everyone, and if you don't like your handwriting, maybe not for everyone, but I think we managed to do a pretty good job. Another like maybe controversial thing we did is not really spend any money on florals. I think in the end we pared it back to my wedding bouquet, my sister's like single stem bouquet, the groomsmen had their boutonnieres. I think we paid for one big floral arrangement which sat on one of the tables and we used for various things throughout the day as decoration. And that's all we needed really, because again, we were so lucky to be in a garden. The greenery was stunning. There were lemon trees. We just realized we didn't need it. And also we got quoted initially for some things like ground floral arches, which I know is another big trend, flowers lining the aisle, flowers on the dinner table. And that came back to thousands of pounds. And we just realized we didn't want to spend that money on that. Never mind how wasteful it would feel to have all of these flowers go to waste. So instead, we just kept it to the bare necessities. For the wedding dinner, we actually ended up choosing like a stunning arrangement of just loads of candles going down the middle, and the lighting that gave, the ambiance that gave once the sun went down was just stunning. That was so pretty. And again, one of the things we got the most compliments on, I think I briefly mentioned this already, but we didn't end up doing any wedding favors. We didn't think it was necessary, and we didn't really want to buy things for our guests that we didn't know they wanted just for the sake of it. So we didn't do that. The one thing we did do was put out fans for the wedding service and put them on people's chairs, and they also doubled up as like a seating arrangement. We didn't do a big board with seating arrangements. We didn't really have any signage for our wedding. Because again, it was just family and friends. So just had the fans out with people's names. They could all like walk around and figure out where they were. I saw people using the fans throughout the weekend afterwards and bringing them home. So yeah, wedding favors, again, is something I don't think a lot of people need or use. If you can find something that feels genuinely useful, then okay, sure, go for it. A lot of these decisions were made partly because they weren't needed and partly because of budget. We were quite strict on our budget. But one thing that we really paid attention to, one thing that I thought was important to spend the money on, was a photographer, because these would be the wedding keepsakes. And I really looked around to make sure that we found a photographer that fit the style that we wanted. And I was very picky that for both the London wedding and the Italy wedding, it was the right style of photographer, which if you're interested, I found people who were very editorial, documentarian, and also had sort of a vintagey feel. And that meant we got the sweetest photos ever. They were exactly like I wanted. And a big reason for that was because I gave both of them detailed mood boards about exactly the style I wanted, some of the shots I really wanted, which meant that on the day, they were referencing those mood boards. They were checking with me saying like, oh, let's get this one here. And now I just have the photos that I always wanted. Both photographers were amazing and both worked with film photos as well as digital. So we got a whole cluster of 35mm photos alongside our digital album. And those are just so special to me. It's a completely different style of photo. And it means that we have such different vibes from the day, because we have the professional ones, the film ones, and the disposable camera ones that our guests were taking. And I know that sounds like a lot. It is. We have so many photos, but it's so nice to see how different parts of the day were captured by different things, and it just means we have so much to look back on. Now, the wedding video is where we struggled a little bit. Initially, we were going to go for a videographer. I know they're very popular online, but it felt like too much for us. And I also didn't really like the idea of someone walking around with a big camera, getting the same kind of content you get from a wedding photographer. You know, people know there's a camera there, people know there's a video there. They're not going to be as chill. So the compromise we made was finding a secondhand video camera online and passing that around our guests. This ended up working perfectly. We also took it on our honeymoon, and it's going to become more of a family camera that we hopefully capture a lot more on, not just our wedding. And the footage it came out with was just perfect. It was so personal. It was a little bit grainy. It was just exactly, again, what I wanted. And I think that's all I had to tell you. Again, this is just an opinion video. If you did your wedding differently, then let me know how. And if you're planning your wedding right now, then I hope this was helpful. I know firsthand now how much pressure there is to buy and consume and make your wedding the perfect day possible. And my advice to that is to tune it all out and just do what makes sense to you, what makes you happy. Groundbreaking advice, I know. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll speak to you guys very soon. Okay, bye everybody.